president. What did you make of his comments initially?
Well, I hope he's sincere about it, but if he really wants to come forward and do something really good for the country, it really needs to be something that binds future Congresses. If you just talk about, oh, we're going to cut $2 trillion over 10 years, there's no guarantee that a future Congress will abide by that agreement. So there's really very flimsy guarantee there. But if you have a balanced budget amendment to the Constitution, future Congresses will have to balance the budget. Who knows, it might include getting rid of some tax deductions or tax credits, but we would have a rule of law that we went by, and that's a rule that says you have to balance your budget. I am convinced that Congress, the president, no matter which party, are not responsible or trustworthy enough to do this without binding them by the chains of the Constitution. You have to have an amendment. You have to say you have to balance the budget, or I don't believe it'll ever happen.
He did throw out a little bit in terms of a time frame, speaking about 2 weeks. He will meet on Thursday, so with members from both chambers and both sides of the aisle. I do know that Senator Mitch McConnell is one of those that will be at the White House on Thursday. Again, what do you hope? Obviously, you'll speak before everybody goes in as to what you hope comes out of that meeting. Do you expect anything to come out of that meeting?
Well, I think really what has to happen is both sides have to come together, but we have to acknowledge the problem is spending. We're spending $1 out of $4 in the economy on government. We used to do 1 out of 5. It's risen dramatically in the last few years, so spending is out of control. We've got to cap and control federal spending, but it's not really on the revenue side. We pay plenty in taxes. You talk to anybody who looks at their paycheck and ask them, do you think you're paying too little in taxes? You'll find a very small minority of people who think they're not paying enough in taxes. We're paying plenty in taxes, but we've got to do something about the spending.
Is there anything that would appease you in terms of an increase in taxes? Anything at all? I mean, is there anything they can give you on one side that would make you say, okay, I'll agree to this and this tax increase?
Right. Well, I voted to get rid of the ethanol credit. So I do think that we could get rid of some tax credits and deductions. But if we do that, it has to be part of getting lower rates. So I was always a fan of Steve Forbes' plan to have a flat rate and less deductions. But if we're just going to get rid of deductions, that is basically increasing taxes on the economy. It's a bad time. Economists universally say bad thing to do, bad to raise taxes in a recession or cost jobs. So I would do it, but only in the context of lowering and flattening rates.
All right, one final thing for you, Senator Paul. The president did mention this kicking the can down the road. I know over the weekend some Republicans floated the idea of a mini deal out there that might give you 6 to 8 months to play with. Are you in favor of that at all, or do you agree with the president in saying it makes no sense to kick the can?
I'm voting against the mini deal, but I'm also voting against using the metaphor of kicking the can down the road. That one I think is getting overused a bit.
We use it all. Guilty as charged. Guilty as charged on this one. Do you believe then, and we had Steve Moore on here, I must have spoken to 100 economists about this. August 2nd, on one side you hear catastrophe from one side. On the other side you hear, you know what, it won't be that bad. Where do you fall on that argument?
Well, you know, we bring in $200 billion in revenue every month, and our interest payment's about $20 billion. So I think the president could take this off the table right now, and the president should promise the American people that he won't default, that he'll pay the interest on the loans. We have enough revenue to pay for about 70% of government, and interest rates about 7 to 10%. So we could keep paying interest, and we should. We shouldn't default, but we should have real budgetary reform. And the election last year was not about accepting some tokenism. It wasn't about accepting empty promises for 10 years. It was about really doing something. I think if you polled the balanced budget amendment versus raising the debt ceiling, I think the American people are with us on this.
Senator, I've got to run. Thank you so much for sticking with us. We appreciate it, Senator Rand Paul. Well, special coverage after the break. Bill Hemmer and Martha McCollum on the Casey Anthony verdict. We'll see you tomorrow.